In the late 1960s, a faceless man stalked the San Francisco Bay Area. He hunted young couples. He claimed to have killed as many as 37 people. And he taunted investigators with letters full of puzzles, codes no one could break. He signed every message the same way, with a symbol, a crosshair, a mark of death. The Zodiac Killer didn't just murder. He wanted to be seen, to be remembered, to be feared. And more than 50 years later, no one knows who he was. December 20th, 1968. The night was cold and the roads were empty. 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen had driven to a quiet lover's lane just off Lake Herman Road near Vallejo, California. It was a place young couples went for privacy. That night, it became something else entirely. At around 11 p.m., someone approached their car. No one knows exactly what was said, but what followed was execution. David was shot once in the head at close range. Betty Lou ran. She was shot 5 times in the back. Her body was found 28 feet from the car. There were no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, no motive. The case was tragic, but not unique. At the time, police believed it was likely a crime of passion or perhaps a robbery gone wrong. But what they didn't know was that this was only the beginning. Just over 6 months later, on the night of July 4th, 19-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 22-year-old Michael Mageau were sitting in a parked car near Blue Rock Springs Park, just 4 miles from the first crime scene. At around midnight, another car pulled in behind them. The driver stepped out, approached the passenger side, and opened fire. Darlene was shot 9 times. Michael survived, barely. He didn't say a word, just walked up and started shooting. Within an hour, police received a phone call. The man on the line calmly confessed to the murders. Then he said something that sent a chill through every officer in the room. "I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." That call connected 2 murders, but it was nothing compared to what came next. The killer wasn't done. He wanted attention. He wanted control. He would soon give himself a name, he would challenge the police, and he would write a letter that still haunts criminal history to this day. August 1st, 1969. Just 1 month after the second confirmed Zodiac attack, 3 nearly identical letters arrived at the editorial offices of the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each envelope contained a handwritten letter. Each letter claimed responsibility for the Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs murders. But these weren't simple confessions. They were warnings and puzzles. The killer demanded that the newspapers publish his message, or he would kill again. Attached to the letters were 3 parts of a cipher, 408 characters in total, containing, he claimed, his identity. The cipher was distributed to the public, but it was cryptanalysts and amateur codebreakers, not the police, who first cracked it. Within a week, a high school teacher and his wife broke the code. The message was chilling. The killer spoke of murder as a game and claimed he would collect slaves for the afterlife. "I like killing people because it is so much fun." But one critical detail was missing. Despite his promise, the killer did not include his name. The handwritten letters were submitted for forensic analysis. Experts examined the strokes, angles, pressure points, and slant to compare with any known suspects. No match was found. Investigators noted unique characteristics: misspellings, overemphasis on certain letters, a deliberate style, possibly to disguise true handwriting. It suggested intelligence and careful construction. The envelopes were postmarked from San Francisco. The stamps were standard. The paper, common stock. There were no fingerprints, at least none usable. One partial print was recovered from a later envelope, but it was incomplete and degraded. To this day, it has never been definitively matched. With so little physical evidence, investigators turned to behavioral profiling. The killer appeared methodical, detail-oriented, and extremely manipulative. His writings suggested narcissism, sadism, and a need for control, not just over his victims, but over the investigation itself. He baited police, corrected newspapers, lied about some details, and exaggerated others. It wasn't just about killing, it was about dominating the narrative. More letters arrived over the months and years, each one marked with the Zodiac's crosshair symbol. Some included maps, others contained more ciphers. One was sent with a blood-stained piece of a victim's shirt. It was a chilling confirmation. The killer wasn't bluffing. He had physical contact with the body. The message was clear. He was watching, and he was close. Despite the detailed analysis of handwriting, paper stock, stamps, and language patterns, no suspect ever matched the evidence enough to bring charges. The Zodiac's letters remain some of the most studied communications in American criminal history. But the man behind them stayed just out of reach. The evidence was limited. The killer left no usable fingerprints. No eyewitness could identify him with certainty. But law enforcement had something else: patterns, geography, behavior, and just enough witness input to begin narrowing their list. Each confirmed attack happened within a 60-mile radius in Northern California. Investigators began plotting locations, victim profiles, and access routes. The pattern suggested the killer knew the region well, possibly a local. He struck in semi-rural locations with fast access to highways. He approached victims in public but secluded areas, car pullouts, parks, trails, then disappeared before police arrived. That level of precision wasn't random. Only one Zodiac attack had a confirmed eyewitness to the suspect's face. On October 11, 1969, cab driver Paul Stein was shot in the head in San Francisco's Presidio Heights neighborhood. Teenagers watched from a nearby window as the killer wiped the interior, tore a piece of Stein's shirt, and walked away. Their description led to a sketch: heavy-set, 35 to 45 years old, short brown hair, glasses, calm, calculated. Police responded within minutes, but an early miscommunication described the suspect as a black male. Officers passed the real killer on the street and let him walk away. In 1971, Vallejo PD began to focus on one man, Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher with a history of violence, access to the crime locations, and disturbing personal writings. He lived near the Vallejo and Benicia killings. He owned a Zodiac brand wristwatch. He was reported to have spoken about killing couples, and he once told a friend he liked the idea of calling himself Zodiac. Police searched his trailer. They found weapons, ciphers, explosive materials, but no direct evidence linking him to the murders. His handwriting didn't match. His fingerprints didn't match, and DNA from one envelope years later did not match. Despite overwhelming suspicion, Arthur Lee Allen was never charged. And after his death, no new letters arrived, but investigators couldn't prove a connection. His trail went cold. Over the decades, dozens of suspects were investigated. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber; Bruce Davis, associate of Charles Manson; a retired military code expert; a newspaper editor; even a convicted child molester with a similar cipher obsession. Some had motives, others had handwriting similarities. A few even made cryptic confessions. But every time DNA, fingerprints, timelines, or alibis ruled them out. The FBI and local police continued testing evidence into the 2000s and 2010s, re-examining envelopes, stamps, and paper fibers with modern technology. Still, no definitive match. More than 5 decades later, law enforcement had a suspect with motive. dozens of leads and hundreds of tips, but nothing stuck. The trail, for all its depth, led nowhere. By the early 2000s, the Zodiac Killer case had gone cold. The letters had stopped. The trail had faded, but technology had not. In 2002, law enforcement revisited the Zodiac's communications. Using updated DNA extraction methods, a partial genetic profile was recovered from a stamp, one he had supposedly licked himself. The profile excluded the most infamous suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, and with that, decades of suspicion collapsed. The breakthrough in the Golden State Killer case renewed hope. Genetic genealogy was now helping close cold cases once thought unsolvable, but the DNA recovered from the Zodiac letters was limited, degraded, contaminated in some cases, and as of today it's still not enough to build a viable suspect tree. In 2021, a team of independent investigators called the Case Breakers claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer. Gary Francis Post, an Air Force veteran with a history of violence and alleged ties to the crimes. Their theory was built on circumstantial evidence, photo analysis, testimony from acquaintances, and forensic comparisons. But it lacked official verification. The FBI stated the case remained open. No charges were filed. Post had died in 2018. As with past suspects, the evidence never reached the threshold. Today, multiple agencies still hold pieces of the Zodiac investigation. San Francisco PD, Napa County, Solano, the FBI. Each has case files, some digitized, some untouched for years. Retired detectives believe the killer may still be in official files. Someone questioned, maybe even interviewed. A man who slipped away, not with brilliance, but because the systems in place never aligned. At least 5 murders have been definitively attributed to the Zodiac, possibly as many as 37. No one knows for sure. The victims, David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, Paul Stein, are often footnotes in the legend. But they were real, and their families still wait. For decades, law enforcement followed the evidence. The trails led to names, to theories, to suspects who fit the profile but never the handcuffs. We may never know. Maybe he died, maybe he moved, maybe he's still out there, older now, watching, knowing he got away.